listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you and welcome to The Briefing. Have you taken any vitamins or supplements today? Well, recent studies have found people overdosing on some, including B6, which can cause blood toxicity.
Previously, we thought that you couldn't overdose on those water-soluble vitamins, but we have found that regular high doses of things like vitamin B6, but also vitamin C, can actually cause concern.
But how do you know if you really need these supplements or have just been sold on the idea of them? That's coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Helen Smith. It's Tuesday, the 12th of August.
Hey Tara, and to you listening, we're starting this morning in New South Wales, where the woman once dubbed Australia's worst female serial killer has spoken out for the first time after learning the government wants to compensate her for just $2 million after her 2 decades wrongfully spent behind bars. Kathleen Folbigg called the figure insulting and a slap in the face, saying she's confused as to how the government even came around to the amount, which critics and experts have said doesn't reflect her lengthy stint in jail, mental and reputational damage, and future needs. When asked how much she thinks would be fair by 9 News, Folbigg said it's hard to even give an amount.
I would not personally be able to put a figure on it myself. Nobody could. How do you put a figure on your life?
Now, Folbigg was convicted over the deaths of her 4 children in 2003, but it was overturned 2 years ago after fresh medical evidence found it may have been a rare genetic mutation that killed her children instead. Now, since the backlash over the proposed payout, New South Wales Premier Chris Minns has rejected calls to increase it, telling Folbigg to sue the state if she wants more, as the government doesn't just have spare millions lying around. But Folbigg says the prospect of more legal action is traumatising in itself. However, she said she is prepared for one more fight to make up for the best years of her life that were taken from her. And earlier in the week, the Premier also shot down suggestions that that figure was due to the Attorney General not being convinced of Folbigg's innocence, instead reiterating it simply can't afford to pay more.
Mourners have gathered for the funeral of 5 Palestinian journalists and camera operators killed in a premeditated attack by the Israeli military in Gaza. 28-year-old Al Jazeera correspondent Anas al-Sharif was among those murdered by the Israeli drone strike on Sunday, as well as 4 of his colleagues targeted while they were sheltering in a media tent outside of a local hospital. Following his death, a message was posted on al-Sharif's X page saying, "If these words of mine reach you, you know that Israel has succeeded in killing me and silencing my voice. Allah knows I have given great effort and all my strength to be a support and voice for my people. Do not forget Gaza." And that's because they'd reportedly been made aware Israel was targeting him for his reporting. Al-Sharif and his colleagues' killings have prompted backlash and condemnation from across the globe, with Al Jazeera describing the strike as a deliberate attack on press freedom in an attempt to prevent coverage of the worsening war and starvation crisis.
The United Nations and Foreign Press Association are among those who've expressed outrage over the killings and Israel's defence of its actions, saying Israel has continued to describe journalists as militants and Hamas members without any verifiable evidence. Now, the UN has called for an independent investigation into the journalists and camera operators' murders, which are the latest of over 270 reporters and media workers that have been killed since the war first began. And according to the US's Brown University Costs of War project, the war on Gaza is the deadliest war for journalists in history, with more killed than during World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War and other conflicts combined.
A woman has been charged with reckless foreign interference in a case that includes Hermes and Birkin handbags worth over $30,000 each, multiple properties, thousands in cash, and a Rolex watch. The Chinese national and Australian permanent resident remains in custody after being denied bail by the ACT Supreme Court, being deemed a flight risk after search warrants were carried out at a Canberra residence. Now, during the search, police found hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of luxury items, brands including Burberry, Gucci and Louis Vuitton. Now, redacted lines did not reveal all of the items in the police report, but one receipt showed a $400,000 purchase.
The Australian Federal Police alleged the woman was tasked by China's Public Security Bureau with spying on an Australian-based Buddhist group, Guanjin Chitta, and has been paid more than $230,000 by the People's Republic of China since 2017. Now, that Buddhist group has actually been banned in China, but they can practice here in Australia, and their tradition promotes really fringe beliefs, including that former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd was a Chinese man in a past life. Now, the police report also alleges that this woman travelled to a region in China and received taskings from a spy handler, as well as instructions via the encrypted messaging app WeChat, where she was allegedly told to infiltrate the Australian-based Buddhist group, collect information on the residential addresses of past leaders in Australia, take photographs of the group's national offices and the front doors of its associated businesses.
The woman told the court she had no intention to flee, but the AFP alleged her continued communication with Chinese government officials meant evidence risked being destroyed if bail was allowed, with her court date coming just days after ACO confirmed Australia was increasingly becoming a target of espionage, costing the government more than $12 billion per year. Now, if found guilty, she faces up to 15 years in jail, with the matter returning to court in September.
New taxes for electric vehicles are on the way after drivers have escaped paying petrol taxes that help fund Australia's road upgrades for years. The proposed taxes were flagged by Treasurer Jim Chalmers back in June and are set to be up for discussion in the federal government's productivity roundtable next week with the country's transport industry leaders. Now, the federal government says ultimately the decision to introduce the taxes will be left up to each state and territory, but the Minister for Social Services, Tanya Plibersek, says an EV tax makes sense as more people make the switch.
It's no secret that as the number of petrol vehicles and diesel vehicles goes down, the take from fuel excise decreases. That means less money for building and maintaining roads.
So how exactly does the fuel excise work? Well, all Aussies who buy petrol and diesel at the servo pay 51.6 cents a litre in fuel excise. So for a typical household with a car running on petrol, the tax costs more than $1,200 a year and is collected by the federal government. So drivers of pure electric vehicles who simply need to plug in their cars to recharge them do not pay this. Now, to clarify, the fuel excise helps fund the federal budget and is not directly allocated to roads, but some motoring groups have urged governments to adopt road pricing as EVs become more popular. And this has been attempted in Victoria, where they tried to put in place a 2-cent per kilometre charge on EV users in 2023, but the proposal was overturned by the High Court. So watch this space.
And hold on to your seats. Don't fall off your chairs with excitement because the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, have penned a new multi-year TV deal with Netflix, Helen, meaning more of them on our TV screens. Woo! No, I kid, but let's just hope that they bring us better content than this moment from Meghan's recent lifestyle series, With Love, Meghan.
I don't think anyone in the world knows that Meghan Markle has eaten Jack in the Box.
It's
and
so
loves
funny, too, that you keep saying Meghan Markle. You know I'm Sussex now.
Oh, my
We're
God.
unpacking stuff.
That awkward moment went viral on TikTok. And now, despite reports that the series ratings flopped, meant the streaming platform wouldn't be working with the pair again. Instead, they've confirmed they've got a new 5-year, $100 million deal with Netflix, which will include a Christmas special later this year and a second season of With Love, Meghan, which has shocked some and drawn a little bit of criticism, considering it didn't even make it into Netflix top 300 shows, while Harry's doco called Polo only ranked at 3,346 of 7,000 shows.
Yeah, I can't say I think the pair make TV gold. I mean, I did think their original self-titled series, Harry and Meghan, wasn't as bad, and I'm a bit of a critic. It delved into their lives and the backlash after leaving their roles in the royal family, as well as like the horrific tabloid media that basically stalks them overseas. Like, that was pretty interesting. But besides that, the other series have left a lot to be desired, I think. But I don't know, maybe it's just me. I've never been a huge royals fan. I've never got excited by this stuff, besides The Crown, which, by the way, I will say is actually fantastic for a non-fan. But nonetheless, the couple says they're feeling inspired for their next project together. So get your popcorn ready. Are you going to be watching this one?
Yeah, look, I didn't watch the other two, so I doubt that I will be watching this one. But I do love a doco though, but I just think this might not be my cup of tea.
Okay, no more Meghan cooking shows for you then. Well, that brings our headlines to a close for today. Coming up next is your deep dive, Helen, taking a look inside the vitamins and supplements industry that's worth billions and whether you're being sold a scam. Have a listen to that up next.
Vitamins and supplements are a billion-dollar industry here in Australia, and they're routinely added to food products. But what happens when you overdose on them? We've recently seen reports of B6 blood toxicity on the rise, which can have life-altering implications. B6 is added to thousands of vitamin supplements and food items, from magnesium and zinc to breakfast cereals, with experts finding some energy drinks have 6 times the recommended daily intake of B6 in them. But what about other supplements like vitamin A or C? And do we really need to be taking them? Dr Terri-Lynne South is a GP, dietitian and spokesperson for the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. Dr South, what is B6 blood toxicity?
B6 blood toxicity is when there are elevated levels of the vitamin B6 in a person's blood, and then that actually causes negative consequences. The one that is most typical is what we would call peripheral neuropathy. So peripheral means feeling abnormal sensations that might be numbness or tingling or pain or loss of sensation in the peripheries. And what we're talking about there is those lower extremities of the hands and feet, for example.
So how common is B6 blood toxicity?
To be honest, we don't really know how common it is because it's something that's only recently been brought to the attention of the wider public as well as healthcare professionals. And so it would only come to people's minds because people are aware of it and asking about it or presenting to their doctor with the symptoms of peripheral neuropathy, and the doctors are now aware that that's one of the causes that they need to test for. Peripheral neuropathy can be caused by a number of different things, for example, type 2 diabetes, excessive alcohol intake. But previously, the vitamin D6 concern probably wasn't as well known as these other causes of peripheral neuropathy.
And why is this occurring? Is it just from taking an excessive dose of B6 supplements?
It's very unusual for people to have a deficiency of vitamin B6 if they're otherwise healthy and they're eating, a normal nutritious diet. So we often don't necessarily need supplementation unless someone is deficient because they've had bariatric surgery or some other reason that would stop them from being able to access or absorb vitamin B6 naturally in foods. The reason it's been added, I think, to, a lot of supplements, including some of our food and drinks, is I think in the supplement case, there's been this, it's part of the, the B complex, B group of vitamins, which is known to have a role in energy production. And so I feel as though it's been one of those things that has been touted as, I remember growing up, it was, vitamin, B stress management formula and these sorts of things. And most recently, we can see that some of the marketing around B group vitamins, and particularly vitamin B6, is about energy production. So I feel as though some people may be taking this more from a wanting to promote their health, their cognition, their energy, rather than actually feeling as though this is a deficiency. But this is where we're seeing that, they can have harms when people are taking too much. And they can be taking too much because it comes in a number of different forms. And so it may be not just in a multivitamin and mineral, it can be high doses in magnesium supplements. So a lot of people who have reported peripheral neuropathy were quite surprised to see that it was in their, magnesium that they might have been taking for muscle cramps. And then the other big surprise is how much, dose is actually in some of the energy drinks that are on the market.
Yeah, and we've seen some reports saying that some of these energy drinks can have up to 6 times the recommended daily intake of B6 in them. How dangerous is that when we might not know how much we are consuming?
I think people need to be aware that in the energy drinks, yes, it's much higher than what is recommended, and particularly if people are having more than one energy drink a day, in addition to also taking multivitamins and minerals. And most recently, there was a reduction in the amount of vitamin B6 that can be put in the supplements, again, trying to reduce that. And so that some of the higher dose supplements need to be behind the counter at a pharmacist. So people need to have that conversation with the pharmacist about multiple sources and concerns about high doses. But we're not necessarily seeing that being regulated for consumers when they're accessing, supplements within a drink such as those energy drinks.
And how are vitamins regulated in Australia?
There are 3 different ways that consumers can access supplementary vitamins, and they all have their different regulatory bodies. And I think that's part of the problem, is that it can be so easily, people can get the supplements in multiple different ways, and they all have different regulations that aren't necessarily, working together. And so, yes, with regards to vitamin and mineral, that is regulated by the Therapeutic Goods of Australia. With regards to food, and that includes drinks, that is by the Food Standards of Australia and New Zealand. And then there's a separate regulatory body when it comes to complementary medicines as well, which is separate from vitamin and mineral formulations.
The supplements industry is worth a lot of money, billions of dollars in Australia. When should we be taking vitamins and supplements? How important are they?
To be honest, most Australians would not need to supplement a healthy diet with vitamins and minerals. I do think it's much better to try and get our micronutrients, our vitamins, minerals from food. And particularly, the more that we can have, fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, lean protein sources, the better, because the vitamins and minerals are just one thing. But, in something that we call the food matrix, you're also getting a better absorption of those vitamins and minerals, but you're also getting a lot of other nutrients that are not singular to just those vitamins and minerals that we know of. So people, I think, should be putting their energy into how can they get those minimum serves of the healthy foods. And again, it would only be people that are known to have a deficiency or at increased risk of a deficiency that should be looking at supplementation, and that it's not necessarily going to give, what we would all want, which is a bit more, energy, whether that is mental energy or physical energy.
What's the responsibility of food and products where this B6 can be added to food, like cereals or protein bars? What's the responsibility of those products to warn its customers of excessive higher levels of B6 that they might have not known are in these foods?
Yeah, look, it's in general, it's quite different between the solid foods versus the liquid foods. So in, a lot of the solid foods, the degree of vitamin B6 might only be 25% of the recommended daily intake. So when it comes to, breads and cereals and those sorts of things, it's less of an issue. It tends to be the energy drinks. And it's interesting. Now, these drinks are not health drinks, even though they're purported to, make people feel better. And I think that because there is, these quasi, health or, energy promoting messages, people are consuming them in much greater amounts than even what's recommended on the actual cans themselves. I've got teenagers and I see how much, they're promoted and see particularly how well they target the teenagers. And, I am consumed and the the high volume. So it's not just, a 200 or 300 ml can, it's a 500 ml can. And, even though there might be something is written on that can about, limiting use, I've seen that, the teenagers having, more than one a day, every day. And, and that, as we said, that's just one way that they can be getting the excessive vitamin B6.
What's the responsibility of the government here? Do they need to step in to further regulate vitamins and supplements being added to everyday products?
Well, we actually have seen a response from the government to some public and health professional submissions about the concern. The TGA have already had one intervention of asking for labelling of vitamin and mineral preparations above 10 milligrams, as well as reducing the top dose.
So talking about B6 blood toxicity, I want to broaden it out a little bit. Which vitamins take longer to leave your body, which can accumulate in your body more likely than others?
Look, vitamins are generally broken down into what we'd call water-soluble vitamins versus fat-soluble vitamins. And there are 4 fat-soluble vitamins, which is vitamin A, D, E and K. And in general, we always thought it was only the fat-soluble vitamins that could be stored in the body and accumulate. And therefore, there was, that's why I think previously we thought that you couldn't overdose on those water-soluble vitamins, which includes the B complex, includes vitamin C. But we have found that regular high doses of things like vitamin B6, but also vitamin C, can actually cause concerns. We've already talked about B6, but vitamin C, for example, excessive use of vitamin C can contribute to kidney stones. And we do know that excess vitamin A in particular can be toxic as well. And again, vitamin A, where is that found? Yes, in supplements, but it's also found in what we would call the sweet meats or the offal meats. So, we store a lot of vitamin A in our own livers, as example. So if people are eating those offal meats, then they could easily be getting high doses of vitamin A in addition to any vitamin and mineral supplements, is just one example. Previously, water-soluble vitamins were thought not to be a concern. Being water-soluble, they thought, if you had excesses, you would just, excrete it in your urine, wee it out. And certainly if people notice, the difference in colour of their urine between taking a vitamin and mineral supplement versus not, it often is a deeper yellow colour, and often that is those excretions of the water-soluble vitamins. But I think the B6 story, it gives us pause to actually, rethink some of these assumptions.
So how concerned should we be about overdosing on vitamins or supplements?
Yeah, I think that in regards to women who are looking to become pregnant, the fat-soluble vitamins in particular are of a concern. So just being aware particularly of sources of high vitamin A as an example. And then actually just thinking about, could people be putting more effort into, having those healthier food options so that they don't need a multivitamin and mineral. And if they do wish to have a multivitamin and mineral, looking at, what the doses, particularly of vitamin B6 are, and having a trusted source and avoiding, food sources in the first instance.
That was Dr Terri-Lynne South there from the Royal Australian College of GPs. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That's it for now. Before you go though, we'd love it if you could share this ep with someone else you think might enjoy it as well. It's a really easy way you can support everything we do here at The Briefing. And you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.
Listener.